What's good, everyone? This is Terrance from Spoken Soul. We're just getting things moving. We got a lot of stuff in store for you guys. So, if you want to be part of the community, please be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so we can keep you up to date on everything we got going in the draft. Thanks, and we'll see you soon. Welcome back to Spoken Soul, home of the essential athlete. I'm Terrance, here with Anthony as always. And today we're going to be talking about that first ride back from injury. And of course, talking about myself. I spent the last, I want to say, 3 or 4 weeks getting myself back into, I guess, what I would call riding shape. So from the period of February right up through the end of May, I wasn't cycling or running or stretching. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. But once I got the clearance to go ahead and start riding again, I had to get back on the trainer, get acclimated, get my body back to the point where I could pedal, make sure that the form was correct, and just trying to get the wind, my cardio, to a point where I felt comfortable to say, all right, let's get back out there. And the weather played a factor. The weather always plays a factor in all of that, right? So we got some good weather last weekend. We got the crew together, small version of the crew, and we decided, all right, man, let's get back out there. So when I knew I was going to ride and I got out there, I had to make sure that for me, I had the proper expectations. And part of that is because, and we mentioned this last week while we were riding, being on a trainer and riding on the road is very different.
Very.
Right? So there's a reality when you get out there and you're in an environment that's different from your trainer.
Yes.
There are a number of things that the trainer can't prepare you for. One, the terrain is much different than when you're sitting on a trainer in your basement, garage, living room, wherever you are, right? So from a mental focus perspective, you got to be on. You got to get used to either calling out or listening to someone calling out hazards, right?
Yes. Yep.
And it takes a while for that to actually to click in. You know what I mean? The other part of that environment is when you're on the trainer, you're not worried about people. You're not worried about other cyclists because you can ride right through them.
Right through 'em, yep.
You know what I mean? So there was that aspect of it, and I had to get real quickly used to that again because I think you can underestimate the impact that actually has. When you're on the trainer, your reaction time doesn't matter.
Because there is no reaction time.
Because
There is no reaction time.
And you know what? That's a bit of a detriment too, right? Because
Yes.
you're riding, you're in a group, you're not concerned with someone being on your back wheel or overlapping your back wheel, you overlapping, or someone,
The kid that's to the left.
Exactly.
We were the kids that were on the bike that we were coming across.
Exactly. So you're not worried about all that. And so that's why I purposely wanted to do the bike path. Not so much because I know there was going to be kids out there, but because I would much rather get reacclimated on a bike path and have to worry about people as a hazard,
Yeah.
as opposed to cars as a hazard.
And I have some questions.
Yeah.
I'm normally not the questioner, but so because I was thinking about that, we were talking about that, and I was excited that the boys are back together. I always love when we ride together because it's just that camaraderie. But I was thinking because I know I had been out there a couple of times before that because obviously I had did the marshalling. So I was thinking, and I guess my question for you is, like, and first off, don't call it a comeback. He been here for years.
Yeah,
So,
you know what?
So
Not to interrupt you, but I think it's important to point that out, right? So the reason why I can't really call it a comeback is because I don't get out on the road until I'm ready to get out on the road. And so when I get out there, I'm gonna be ready to be out there.
Yes. So my question that I was gonna ask you is, because I got a chance to think about that a few weeks, I think a month or so back when I started to get back on the road. So can you tell me a little bit about, and although we've done it hundreds of times, what was it like once you got through the ritual, you got out of your car, you had your stuff on. Tell me what it felt like when you first got on a bike and you clicked in and you had to balance it versus when you're on a trainer and it's already balanced. That's my first question.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I mean, so from I thought about that before I even actually did it.
Yeah.
Right. It brought me back to when I first started using clipless pedals.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember I was on the bike path, and I purposely went on the bike path, and I went at a point in time where there wasn't a lot of people. And it just so happened that I was pedaling on a bike path and I had to turn around, and it just so happened to be a family there, and I couldn't unclip. I couldn't unclip, and I fell in front of this family. So when I got out the car, I got all my stuff ready.
Yep.
And I got on the bike. What I always do when I get on the bike, I clip one foot in and I leave the other one on the top of the pedal before I actually clip in. And what I did was I kept that one foot unclipped for a while.
How long? So if and I know they don't know that they don't.
So
so they don't know, but so
till the light. Think about that.
So that would have been like a quarter to a half a mile. Okay.
So I kept it unclipped to the light, right? So first, when we come down, right, we got that left turn and there's cars coming. So I always make sure I unclip before I get there, but I never clipped in before I got there.
Okay, so you were half clipped in.
Yeah, I only had so I only had my right foot clipped in.
And you were right clipped until so
the left foot is out.
Yep.
The left foot is out.
All right, so
that's clear. And then I pedaled until I got up to the light. And it's a ways up to the light.
It's about probably from where we started.
I say it's probably about a quarter mile.
Actually, it's a half a mile because sometimes when we warm up and we go from where that is to there, so that's okay. So I got your mindset with there. So that's a way to mentally acclimate back into the ride. So what did you feel in terms of like from a mental perspective where okay, I have to switch from like now I'm riding and it's like the actual real environment and it's not, in a character like zone where we are with Zwift.
Yeah, so the mental aspect of it is always interesting because there are two sides of it.
Yep.
From one perspective, you feel good because you're actually out there. You're doing something that you enjoy doing, and you haven't been able to do it outside. Well, this is the first opportunity that you're getting to do it outside, and you're starting to feel all that different stimuli that you normally feel when you're out there. The trainer is one thing, and the trainer is good for what it's meant for, right? It's good for keeping that base. It's good for training during the off season and during the actual season, right? It's good to keep your body moving. I'll leave it at that. Getting outside is completely different because, again, like I said, there's so many things going through your mind. And so from a mental perspective, on one side, you feel great.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, for me at least, knowing I haven't done this in a while, I'm not as crisp as I normally am, right? Because you know me, when I'm out there, it's freeing from one perspective.
Yes.
And I was a little upset with myself, and I'm going to get to this in a minute. Well, I'll tell you why I was upset to myself from a mental perspective, because I don't know if you saw this at the end of the ride. At the end of the ride, you know, we come to that light where the highway merges, and you have to stay to the left.
Yes.
The lane is over to the right, but you can't get to that right lane until you cross the actual road.
Correct.
What happened was I crossed the road, and there's a car behind me. And I see the car behind me, and I see the proximity of the car behind me. But in front of me, there's a car, and he's trying to parallel park, and he's backing in. And so this car is approaching at a high speed, and this car is coming. So I put my hand out to tell this guy to actually slow down.
Yep.
This guy didn't like that. And so he pulls over to my side, and he says, "You're supposed to be over there." And I flipped him the bird.
Oh,
and afterwards, I felt so bad.
Yeah.
Not bad because I felt bad because I flipped him the bird.
Okay.
Because from a mental perspective, I'm just getting back out there, and mentally I wasn't where I needed to be. Because I normally would have ignored that person, and I would have never done what I actually did.
So he kind of broke what your normal composure would be, which is a good lead to my second question. What anxieties did you have, I'm going to say it, if any, did you have any anxieties about, like, once you were out there?
So I didn't have. Well, I'm gonna touch on the mental just a little bit more, because from a mental perspective, in the back of my mind, I was telling myself I ain't gonna fall. Right? And you know the whole thing is
you're right.
The whole thing is, you know, when you start cycling and you move to clipless pedals, at some point you understand you're gonna fall. You're gonna fall. And you mentioned this, being on the trainer, there's no risk of you falling.
No.
Not unless you're going crazy.
No.
I mean, if you're on the trainer and you fall, you doing something you ain't supposed to be doing.
Listen,
right?
I don't even let's save space moment. I don't even like to climb in the trainer. Just because I'm like, I don't want that thing to tip over.
Yeah.
So.
Listen, I will say this. There has been a few times where my trainer has rocked.
Yeah.
But that rock brings me back to reality. All right, listen, it ain't that serious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was telling myself I wasn't gonna fall. From a mental perspective, I didn't have too much anxiety, because I knew once we got on the bike path, the worst that would happen is I'd pull a Tim and run somebody over. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, look, if you're on the road, there's a lot that can actually happen.
Yes.
There are a lot more hazards
and
that
distractions.
can go. And distractions that can go. Well, there's a lot more hazards that can go unnoticed when you're on the road, as opposed to the bike path. When you're on the bike path, particularly East Bay, you know there's going to be hazards there, and so you're always on from that perspective, and you're always expecting there's going to be some kids, there's going to be some people, so you're locked in. Yep. And on top of that, the speed is different on the bike path.
Yes, it is.
And getting back out there, my goal wasn't speed.
Yep.
Right? So I was concerned about the distance. And I talked about that before we even got out there. So for me, you know, I like to take advantage of the opportunity when it presents itself from a training perspective. So I know I always get my stuff in. So that means I train very early in the morning. Yep. It's not uncommon for me to be training at 4 a.m, right? I'm also at work at 6:30. So it limits the amount of time that I have. So typically I'll get about 10 miles in in the morning. So leading up to riding outside, I hadn't ridden more than 10 miles in one instance. And I didn't want to be in a situation where, as I started to get up in mileage, it start to impact my back. That was a concern for me, right? And so I got out there, and originally I said, all right, well, let's shoot for 15.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
Let's shoot for 15, and that way, you know, we break in easy.
Easy, yeah.
So what happened was we get out there, and you kept saying, "How are you?" I'm like, "I'm good, man. I feel good." And I did. Physically, I felt good. Yeah. Again, my goal wasn't speed. Yeah. It was, all right, let's see how I deal with the actual distance. I felt good. And so rather than stop at 7, and then rather than stop at 10, we went out to that. It was, I think we went out 15. Yeah, we ended up doing like 32.
It was like 31-ish.
31-ish? Yeah.
31-ish, yeah.
So we get out there, and I'm going to tell you, when I got out there, I was like, I feel good. I said, but now we got to go back.
Oh, once you got to 15, you were like, we got to go back.
We got to. Yeah, I was like, we got to go back, because keep this in mind. You know, when I from a running perspective, from a training perspective, I always do. When I would train for a race, I would do this. During the week, I know I'd have the week would be my really workout runs, right? So if I was doing, well, except for tempo runs, I keep those on Saturdays. But from a pace perspective, I would do those during the week, right? And then on Saturday, you know, I do my tempo runs. But on Sunday, whatever I ran the previous Sunday, I wouldn't go too much over what I ran, right? So you would build up in actual miles.
Build the base, yeah.
This, I did 3 times as many, right? So now you're used to doing 10 miles. You get out there at 15, and you understand you got 15 more to go.
Yeah. And that's why like during the ride, it wasn't, you know, I was conflicted, because like during the ride, I'm like, all right, you know, like we talked about that in the previous episodes. Like, I know who the fuck Tempo T is, so like I know who he is. I know what he's done. I know what he's capable of. But still, at the same time, you know, as being you know, a responsible teammate, you know, understanding, you know, if someone is re-entering the atmosphere, you still have to make sure that they're, you know, no matter what their potential is, that you check in on them. So I was torn, because I'm like, I don't want to keep hounding them to keep
I know, and I appreciate it, but I was like, I'm good, man.
No, I'm saying,
yeah.
No, but because I did understand, that, you know, we said 15, and then we were at 15, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you know,
we still need to do 15.
We still need to do 15.
You know what? But see, that's what a responsible teammate does, because again, ego is one of those things that can be your downfall.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'll tell you this, I had to check my ego, particularly from the perspective of, I told you, I was tired afterwards. Yeah. And even when I got to 15, I thought about it. Yeah. I said, listen, I got 15 more to do. And I started, you know, you start counting down the miles, man. I started counting down the miles, particularly because, you know, it was funny because, you know, we get to the end and you guys use the bathroom, and I wasn't going to use the bathroom. Fortunately, I did. But you start to think about, all right, well, listen, part of it is a little bit of, and I was saying this too, I had physical therapy this week, and a little bit of it is PTSD, right? Yeah. So you start riding, any little thing you feel, immediately you're like, all right.
Yeah. Is that you know, is that it? Yeah. And I think you know, I felt like you did amazing, you know, and I felt like you know, as we always do with our core group, you know, we always try to support each other, encourage each other, make sure that, you know, everyone's doing things that are reasonable, and that we're not out there just trying to be reckless. Yeah. You know, because I recall, and it was funny because there was one point in the ride, and you know, Court just he goes on these tandems when he's, you know, like he's on, like he was on. He started pushing it, and I'm like, what's this guy doing? So then I think at one point you started feeling a little bit, and I think you had passed, and I was like, all right, like we, you know, like it's his first ride. We can't be out here balls to the walls trying to, you know, kill it, you know, and we got, you know, we got to kind of.
You'll notice I stopped.
Yeah.
Because that was purposeful, right? What I wanted to do was I wanted to see how my body would feel in a real life situation, trying to at least hit some of the speeds that I was training at. Because again, you know this. The trainer is different. That speed is a little different. I think it's probably off by 1 to 2 miles per hour.
Yeah, I think it's definitely
about from an effort perspective.
Yes.
Let me put it that way.
You're right, from an effort perspective.
So when I'm training, you know what I mean, and I look at it and I'm like, well, listen, I'm just out here trying to stay in, zone 2, and some of those speeds that I'm hitting, I'm like,
they're fugazi.
Yeah.
Which I want to ask you about that because, and again, I was thinking about, I knew we were going to talk about that this week. So in my mind, I'm like, all right. So I'm thinking about the segments of the ride. So like, say, okay, so when we come back, I could ask you questions about that. So, and I recall there was one section, and I want to ask you how you felt about it. It was where the ice cream / coffee place is, right where you hit that place where you go right into the bike path to where you hit that little stretch. And I believe we picked up at that point in time, we were at, we hit between 17 and I believe 20 miles per hour. I think that may have been off, because when I went and I checked, and I always check the stats, but I went and checked the stats. That segment may have been like our biggest push. So how did you feel at that point? Because I know, we were moving. I mean, it was
turn your mic up a little bit,
okay,
like this. What I mean, let's turn. Yeah, there you go.
All right. So we were moving at that point. Like we were moving.
There you go.
Like we were moving like 17 to 19, 20ish miles per hour, and it was a smooth. Like it wasn't a ragged pace. So how did you feel? If you can recall at that segment, like how you felt, like because we were pushing it, and we didn't just jump. But I think we had gradually moved from like 17ish to like 19ish. And we held it probably for like, I believe it was like 2.5, 3 miles up until probably where we met, until we hit the hill. We hit the top of the hill coming up on the bike path. And then I remember I hit the hill hard. And then you must have felt good because I was like, I hit the hill and listen, I attacked it. And I got there and I just heard, and I knew you were back at that point because you said, keep going. Don't slow down. Keep going. I was like, this motherfucker.
So
tell me how you felt right there.
Listen, I'm going to tell you something. I remember exactly how I felt, right? Again, coming back can be humbling.
Yeah.
I felt good. In my mind, I knew it was coming to an end.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? So this is one of the things where, again, you learn to check your ego because, again, like I said, normally, I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. Yeah. I'm not thinking about, all right, well, you know what? We have this many miles left. Yeah. It's like, the ride is the ride.
The ride is the ride, yeah.
The ride is the ride. And the funny part about it was I knew we were within the last 10 miles, and I know what that means.
Man.
So I felt good.
Yeah.
But if I'm being honest, when we got to that hill,
yeah,
I'm going to tell you something, man. We got to that hill, I was like, all right, listen. I'm glad we're almost to the end.
Okay.
Because the attrition of the ride was what was concerning me. I felt good the whole time. Now, one of the reasons why that push wasn't a big deal for me is because one of the things that you can get from the trainer perspective is if you focus on it, your form is going to be where it really should be. And I'll tell you this. Coming back, knowing that, okay, as soon as you come back or as you're preparing to come back, you have limitations.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to really focus on what it is you're actually doing. And for me, excuse me, what I focused on was really my form.
Okay.
Right? Trying to be as efficient as possible and understanding that because of the situation currently with my back, and I'm going to tell you this, my physical therapist he said, you can't do everything yet. He says, I want you to keep that in mind. He said, and he wasn't saying it from the perspective of, don't do this, don't do that. He was saying it from the perspective of, don't count yourself out from what you're going to be able to actually do. So from a trainer perspective, I really focused on form.
Yeah.
I focused on RPMs and really foot placement on my actual pedals and how to be efficient. So from that perspective, I was locked in with my form.
Yeah.
I'm always locked in from a gear perspective. Yeah. And for most of the ride, we kind of really took it kind of easy. And so from that perspective, you know, I had something, you know, left in me. Yeah. So I felt good there. Yeah. But as we got to that hill, I was gassed. Let me rephrase that. It wasn't that I was gassed. It was my body was not used to doing that type of mileage. Yeah. And my muscles, and when I say my muscles weren't sore, but from the perspective of, you know, trying to take all that, the attrition of jumping up in miles, I was feeling at that particular point in time.
And I think that you bring a great point up too, where I think not just with biking, but running, whatever you're doing, just that, you know, you safely, you know, build up and do that and build up. And for me, seeing, and with that ride, because I had to look at that ride differently too. You know, I think sometimes, you know, because to make me look at it from a cerebral perspective where, you know, the rides have to mean something. Like we were in a good zone 2 ride and it wasn't super slow and it wasn't super fast. Yeah. But to be able to say, okay, during those rides, I'm going to concentrate on, you know, like you said, like you were talking about your foot placement and this for that particular ride. I was like, okay, well, we're going to do this. We're not going to go crazy and we're not going to try to kill it. So maybe for this particular ride, I was able to focus. Hear that? Yeah, it was like a drilling or something. Yeah. Drill, baby. But, how I was able to focus in on the breathing, because that's one of the things for me, you know, is the ability to be able to breathe. Yeah. And so that the breathing can control the heart rate. And so I practiced in that particular one. I was able to work on my breathing, my cadence, and just the form. So to try to use those rides. And that's something that I'm going to take throughout our whole training year, is to come out in every particular ride. That's what I learned. And I know what, you know, when we get to the takeaways. So my takeaway from that ride is, you know, on each particular ride to try to focus on something and say, okay, I want to focus on this so that I can, you know, progress a little bit with that over time. Because you said it perfectly. And thinking about it now, like I was able, when we were on a trainer, to build that base. And I was able, for me, the big takeaway for me and the big thing that I was able to gauge and learn was that I was able to really work on my cadence. And I've been seeing that when I've been getting out on the road. And that was probably some of the things that I struggled with as far as to keep up from a speed perspective. Yep. Really wasn't the effort. It was more of the cadence. So like you said, using, you know, those outdoor rides, those first rides to kind of get a gauge from where you've been to kind of where you want to go. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great ride. And, you know, it was good to see. Obviously, it's always good to have the guys back out there, but also good for us to be out there and enjoying. And we just had fun. You know, it wasn't like we were out there trying to go crazy. It was like, you know, it was like we were out there just, and honestly, just what we say about Smoke and Soul. We were just out there to just kind of enjoy it, you know, enjoy the weather, enjoy whatever we were out there seeing, have some fun, crack some jokes and kind of do that. So that was great. That was great. So I got two takeaways. First, I want to mention it was great seeing Mike Proto out there. Listen, Mike Proto's gonna get every episode. Mike Proto's gonna get a shout out. It was great seeing Mike Proto out there. Yep. I got two takeaways from this weekend, and you hit on one of them. I think that ride has the opportunity to set the tone for the beginning of the actual season, because I think when you just starting the season, you kind of take for granted all those things that you focus on when you are coming back from an actual injury. Mm-hmm. And I think that ride has the opportunity to set the tone for, as we look, as we look forward to the rest of the cycling season, it has the opportunity to set the tone for the type of rides that we actually do. Yep. That's the first thing that I actually learned. Actually, you know what? That's the second thing, the takeaway that I had. The first takeaway was this. Listen, before we talked about preparation, before I leave my house, I'm prepared to ride. How is it that I show up to a ride and Court gets there, takes his bike off and realizes he actually has a flat? How you leave your house with your bike? He had taken his bike, he put it on the rack. He put it on his bike rack. He didn't realize he had a flat until he got to the meeting spot. That was
So
that was hilarious.
yeah, it was.
That was
And
hilarious.
I'm gonna tell you what my takeaway is. Immediately, I start to fix his flat. My takeaway is I've become the mechanic. I've become the bike mechanic.
When you were talking earlier and you were talking about the saddlebag, in my mind I was laughing. I was laughing my ass off because I was thinking, you are the mechanic, because I remember that time we talked about it in one of the earlier episodes when we happened to be riding and I went up the hill and I fell.
Yeah.
And you were the guy to try to diagnose it. I was thinking about the 100-mile ride when my tire blew. You were the guy that was trying to fix it. So in my mind, I'm like, we got our own built-in pet boys with Terrance.
Yeah. And you know the crazy thing about Court? I used my inner tube to fix his flat. And it was just like, he didn't ask me anything. I'm gonna tell you what happened. What threw me off was, as soon as he realized he had a flat, he started to flip his bike over. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm changing. I'm like, oh man, don't flip the bike over. I said you're just flipping your bike over and just putting on the concrete. I'm like, that's when I'm like, Ant, come over here. I'm like, hold this.
The bike.
Hold the bike. And you just took it off. So my takeaway is this. Man, y'all cats better learn how to fix this stuff. What happens when I'm not around?
First off, I know how to fix a flat. I mean, but Terrance does it faster, so he's more efficient. We get back on the road.
I will say this: I was impressed how quickly I actually changed that.
No, listen, you know what to do, and you're right about that. I think people should know about the maintenance of their bike, and I mean, because if you don't know, I mean, you're not always going to be on the ride. So what happens when you're not on a ride? So I think that brings a good point. But it was it was good to be back out there. It was good, and I think it was great to think. I think sometimes we often think. I think when we get out there and we ride, and whatever we may do from a hustling or exercise perspective, I think a lot of times it becomes muscle memory, where we're just so apt to just doing it that we're not thinking, okay, what can I tweak to make it a little better, or to improve a little bit, or to make it a little bit easier. Because I think, and so that we're not just doing the same thing over and over to get the same results.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue, as Jax decided he wanted to have his camera time. I think that's a great segue to close this out, because again, you said something very important. The opportunity to actually think and not get caught in the usual routine that you do on the everyday ride. Yeah. So with that being said, I want to close by just saying this. Coming back from an actual injury provides you the opportunity, as Anthony just said, to actually stop and think about what it is that you should be doing coming up, not just for that ride, but for the remainder of the season. And from a mental perspective, it's okay to feel as if, you have to be concerned with what it is you're doing your first time out. And so until next time, keep those wheels moving, keep those feet turning. Keep those wheels turning and those feet moving. We'll see you next time.
Peace.